Hello, everyone. This is Barbara Bavis. I'm going to be one of your instructors today. Don't worry, we are not getting started. I'm just doing a quick sound check to make sure that everyone can set their audio levels. And if you're having any trouble with your computer audio, if I'm coming in or out right now, I suggest using the call-in feature. The instructions for the call-in feature are on your screen right now. And we're going to get started in about a minute and a half.
Hello, welcome to the Congress.gov webinar. I'm Robert Brammer, and with me is Barbara Bavis, coming to you from the Law Library of Congress with an introduction to Congress.gov. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, now you should be able to see my screen. So Congress.gov replaced our Thomas site that you might have been familiar with. It does a lot of things that Thomas could not. It uses responsive web design, so it'll scale to whatever device you're using, whether that's a tablet, desktop, or a phone. And Congress.gov is very browsable. It uses filters menus on its different collections, so you can perform a very broad search and then quickly narrow it down with the filters menu. I'll talk about that a bit later. The first thing you'll notice is the global search box. And I want to point out that by default, you're only searching materials from the current Congress, the 118th. Click on the drop-down, you can search all Congresses. And you can narrow by particular collections you want to search: legislation, committee materials, which includes committee reports, committee hearings, the congressional record, members, that's member profile pages. I'll talk about that a bit later, and executive nominations. You can also browse collections. At the top, you can click Browse. And the first thing you do is you pick the Congress you're interested in. Then you scroll down and you pick the collection you're interested in browsing. One thing I'd like to point out here is that you can browse legislation by subject. And there are two subject vocabularies assigned to legislation by the Congressional Research Service. We've got policy area subjects, which is about 30 terms. And only one policy area subject can be assigned to a piece of legislation. We've also got legislative subject terms. This is a much broader vocabulary. It's over 1,000 terms. And it includes things like geographic entities. So if you're interested in legislation that impacts a particular place, see that here. And organization names. These are mostly federal entities. So for example, if you're interested in legislation that impacts the Library of Congress, that's a good entry point for you. Okay, underneath the global search box, you've got the most viewed bills. These are the bills that are getting the greatest amount of page views on a given week. You click on the top 10, you've got an archive of them going back to 2014. And as you can see here, the bills that get the greatest amount of page views are sometimes from prior Congresses. So they're not always from the current Congress. To the right, you've got bill searches and lists. These are topics that are frequently of interest to our patrons. First thing is, you notice you can browse legislation by its sponsor. Go ahead and show you how to do that. First, you pick the first letter of the representative's last name. Scroll down, find the representative over here on the left, and then continue to the right, where you'll be able to click on bills sponsored by the representative, amendments sponsored by them, bills they've co-sponsored, where they were the original co-sponsor, and even where they withdrew their co-sponsorship. Underneath that, you can browse legislation that's been introduced, click on public laws, see laws that were passed by the Congress. Click on the US Code. The US Code will take you to federal legislation that is categorized by subject, and the subjects correspond to the titles of the US Code. We also try to make it easy for you to track appropriations by putting it into tables. So the Congressional Research Service creates these appropriation status tables so you can track appropriations. First, you choose the fiscal year. Then I go ahead and choose a previous fiscal year because there's more content. And you have a tabbed approach. You've got regular appropriations, continuing resolutions, supplementals, and the budget resolutions. And the way it works is the same. You start over here on the left with the bill, and then you continue to the right as it goes through the legislative process. So here you're going to find things like committee reports, conference reports, and roll call votes that you can use to research appropriations legislation. Okay, continuing down the screen, you've got current legislative activities. Whenever the House and Senate are in session, you will have a link to a live video feed where you can watch what's happening on the floor. And I want to point out two unique items you've got underneath the Senate, owing to the Senate's unique constitutional role: executive nominations and treaty documents. I click on executive nominations. This is a good place to introduce you to the filters menu on Congress.gov that I talked about a bit earlier. So you've got over 41,000 results. So you can quickly narrow that down using a combination of the filters and search. I am going to search for nominations for Vice Admiral from the 118th Congress, and I'll show you how to do that. So first, I know I'm looking for the 118th Congress, so I'm going to click on that. I know it's a military nomination because it's Vice Admiral, so I'm going to click on that. All right, now I'm going to search within the results that I've narrowed down. I'm going to search for Vice Admiral, and I'm going to put it in quotes. That makes it search for it as an exact phrase. I've already narrowed down my results to 18 through a combination of search and the filters. And of course, you have these sort options over here. So that's just a quick introduction into how you can use filters and search in combination with one another to quickly find what you're looking for in Congress.gov. Continuing down the page, I want to point out Library of Congress reports that are available to you. Got Congressional Research Service reports. The Congressional Research Service writes reports for Congress that are objective and nonpartisan. So they're a great place to conduct research. You can browse them by just clicking search on this screen. And you're going to get a filters menu over here on the left. So, for example, you might narrow down by a topic you're interested in, such as foreign affairs. And the reports are sorted by the most recent date. And I want to point out that you have a clock icon here. CRS updates its reports. And so whenever there are multiple versions of the report available, when it's been updated, you'll see that clock icon so you can see previous versions of the reports if you are interested. You also have Law Library of Congress reports. The Law Library's specialty is foreign, international, and comparative law. So they'll take a topic and see how different countries approach that topic, say the regulation of cryptocurrency, and they'll discuss how different countries have approached that topic so that Congress can benefit from that experience. You can browse the reports by topic, region, year of publication. Go ahead and click on year of publication so you can take a look at some of the most recent reports. So here are some ones from 2023. So those are available to you. Continuing down the screen, we've got the Constitution annotated. If you're starting your constitutional law research, this is a great place to go. This is written by the Congressional Research Service. And what it does is it summarizes constitutional provisions and the leading Supreme Court decisions that have interpreted that provision. You can choose to search or browse it. I'm going to go ahead and do a browse. Click Browse Explanations up at the top. I'll choose the First Amendment. And then I'll take a look at the Establishment Clause. So this is what an article looks like in the Constitution annotated. You've got the summary of the constitutional provision up at the top, and then you've got an article explaining the leading Supreme Court decisions that have interpreted it. And the footnotes lead to the Supreme Court decisions that they're citing, and you can click on that to go read the full text of that Supreme Court case. Other things I like to point out on the Constitution annotated that we use frequently, there is a table of Supreme Court decisions that have been overruled by subsequent decisions. And this is something we frequently use in our work. Also got a table of laws held unconstitutional in whole or in part by the Supreme Court. Again, organized as a table. If you're interested in topics that are in the news that the Congressional Research Service has written about, you'll see that under the Featured Issues section over here on the left. Okay, let's talk about member profile pages. Underneath current members of Congress, I'm going to go ahead and just choose one as an example. All right. So of course, you've got contact information. If the member changed chambers over the course of their career, you'll see that. Underneath biography, if it's a retired member and you want to know where their papers are housed, how to get access to them, click on the biography. Underneath more on this member, you've got a link to find out what the member's committee assignments are. That's something we're often asked. But what most people will use this page for is to find legislation that is sponsored or co-sponsored by a member, and also find the member's remarks in the congressional record. And again, you can use the filters menu to quickly do that. So for example, maybe you're interested in legislation this member sponsored in the current Congress. You can click on the 118th Congress, sponsored legislation, and you've already narrowed down your results to 64. Of course, you've got sort options here. And you have other filters that you can use, such as status of legislation, which is where's that legislation in the legislative process. You can narrow by the legislation subject, which we talked about earlier. And another thing I like to point out on this page is up here at the top, you can click Get Alerts. That allows you to sign up for a free Congress.gov account, and you can get an email each time this member sponsors or co-sponsors legislation, or when the member speaks as recorded in the congressional record. A lot of the important work in Congress is done in committees. And so we make it easy for you to track upcoming House and Senate committee meetings with a schedule. There is a daily and a weekly view. Go ahead and click on the weekly view. And one thing I like to point out here is you can click Get Weekly Alerts, and that will send you an email each Monday with the projected meeting schedule for the coming week. Scroll down. Let's take a look at what a meeting page looks like on the schedule. Got the title, committee, related items. If there's a bill, say that they're discussing that's associated with the hearing, you'll get a link to the bill. Got the location. This, of course, is a field hearing. You'll have a list of witnesses, witness statements, supporting documentation. If this is a hearing that's already taken place and there's a video associated with it, you will see a link to the video here. And I'll point out that the video of committee hearings, especially recent ones, is important because committee hearing transcripts often aren't published for a while. So if you're looking for something recent, a recent committee meeting, you'll often have to go and watch the video. There may not be a transcript available yet. So okay. Want to point out that we have the legislative process videos over here. If you're teaching a political science class, maybe a first-year law class, or you just want a refresher on the legislative process, we have these videos that were written by the Congressional Research Service that are nice and brief, and they also have a transcript at the bottom here. The overview of legislative process video is also available in Spanish. So you might be wondering what's included in Congress.gov in terms of date coverage. You can find that by going up to Support, the Help Center, Congress.gov Collections, and you see coverage dates for Congress.gov Collections. This will tell you by document type what's included in Congress.gov. So for example, the full text of modern legislation goes back to 93. We do have some historical legislation going back to 1799. The congressional record now goes back all the way to December of 1873. So I've covered the global search box. Let's talk about advanced searches that are available to you. Up here, you see advanced searches. This is the advanced legislation search form. And so you build your search by filling out different fields. So here you choose the Congress. You just check off the Congresses you're interested in. Legislation and law numbers, you can type in a citation to a law here or a bill. Words and phrases, type in a words and phrases search. You can narrow by legislation type. So for example, maybe you're only interested in House resolutions. You could uncheck everything except House resolutions. You can narrow by subjects that we talked about earlier. Action and status is where it is in the legislative process. For example, maybe you're only interested in things that have passed the House or something like that. Sponsor, associated co-sponsor, you can narrow by that. And you can even narrow by associated committees. Another advanced search we have is the query builder. And I'm going to go ahead and perform an example search in this one to show you how it works. I'm going to search for the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, assuming I know the title and the sponsor, but I don't know the Congress. So since I don't know the Congress, I'm going to choose Legislation Congress is all Congresses. And now I'm going to choose the field for all bill titles since I know the bill title. I'm going to search for that as a phrase. All right, so I've got my title. Now I need to add an additional line to search for the sponsor. Click on the plus symbol. Choose the sponsor field. I'm going to search for that as a phrase as well. And this uses type ahead. So if you type the first few letters of the sponsor's name, it'll try to auto-complete it. Click search. So there's the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. If there had been more than one result that matched my search terms, you'd see a browse list here. I also want to point out some advanced search tools that you can use in Congress.gov. If you click on search tools up at the top, there are different search operators that you can use in Congress.gov. I'm going to click on search operators and point out a few of them. If you want to return results that include 2 words, see this has elementary and secondary, the and in capital letters. That's telling Congress.gov to return results that have to include elementary and secondary. You've got here in quotation marks, you've got enhanced body armor, the tilt symbol, and 10. That is a proximity search. That's telling Congress.gov to return results that include enhanced within 10 terms of body, within 10 terms of armor. You've also got wildcards. A wildcard you can use in the middle of a word is the question mark. So for example, this will include return results that include women and woman in one search. You can use a wildcard at the end for different endings. So this is the asterisk. This is telling Congress.gov to return results that include, say, appropriation and appropriations in one search. So that is a quick introduction to the Congress.gov homepage and some searching techniques. And now I'm going to turn it over to Barbara, who is going to take you into the legislation.
Great. Thanks, Robert. I am going to share my screen, so just give me one moment. All right, you should be seeing my screen momentarily. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Barbara Bavis. I want to do a sample search of legislation because I know that's what we get asked about the most at the reference desk in the Law Library of Congress. So I want to choose something that's been pretty popular in the news and both in the news and at the reference desk, which is the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2024. While there's both a House version and a Senate version of this legislation currently, bouncing around Congress, for the purposes of this this question, this webinar, I want to look for the bill that originated in and passed the House. So to do that, I'm going to actually use an advanced search. I'm going to use the legislative quick search, which is located, let me get my annotation tool out, which is located if you click the more options link underneath the global search box. You'll see it'll open up the legislative quick search. And you'll see that it defaults to the current Congress, and that's great. This bill is in the current Congress, but I do want to show you, just in case you're not sure if the bill is from the current Congress or from a prior Congress, if you want to, you can cast your net widely and click under this Congress option, 93 through 118, and that's the 93rd Congress through the 118th Congress, the current Congress. And that's going to search throughout those Congresses for your terms of interest. I'm not sure about the bill number in this case, so I am going to leave legislation and law numbers empty, but just know that here you could put a bill number. If you know that it's a piece of legislation that has passed and become law, you can also put the public law number here as well. All right. I want to cast my net pretty widely though, so I'm going to come up to the words and phrases box, and I'm going to type in National Defense Authorization Act. Oh, I have to spell it right though. Now here, if I wanted to do this as a phrase search, so all these words in this order, I could put quotation marks around them here. You don't have to do that if you want to cast your net even more widely. I'm just going to do that here to make sure those words appear in that order. And then I'm also going to click this radio button down, or this box down here that says include full text when available, because I don't just want to search the titles of the bills and the summaries of the bills. I also want to search the full text of the bills as well. All right. Okay, so let me hit my search button here. And when it loads in a moment, you're going to see I've given myself a little bit of a task. I have over 3,600 results. And I did this because I wanted to make sure that you knew if you do get over 1,000 results or thousands of results, that does not mean you have done a bad search. What you can do is instead use the filters on your left-hand side to kind of narrow down your search results. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. But before I move to that, I want to show you what these little links are underneath your search box. You have the option to download your search results, and that's up to 1,000. So not right now, but if I got it down to under 1,000, I could click this download results, and then it would let me download a CSV file or a file that would open in something like Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets, something like that. And you can keep those results in that CSV file. I also might want to save this search. Now, if you set up a free account in Congress.gov, which I have already done, so I'm already logged in, but there is a login button. Let me get my annotation tool out. That would appear here right at the top of your screen. And you can click that button at any time and set up your own free account. All we need is your name and an email address. And once you've done that, you can save your searches. So I'm going to click Save this search. Oh, I thought I had already signed in. So let's sign in. Okay. Interesting. Let me go back. That's interesting. When you hit Save this search, it should give you the option. Let me try opening it in a new tab and see if it does that. It gives you the option to save a search based on, yeah, there we go. When you hit Save this search, it allows you to give it a title. So if you do a lot of searches in an area and you want to kind of delineate them, it's easy to do that. I'm going to do NDAA fiscal year 24. I'm going to hit Save. And then it's going to ask me if I want to set up email alerts. And it's just as easy as that. You can just click Get Alerts, and it's going to give you the option to choose what you want to be alerted on. So in this case, because I've used that legislative quick search, it's going to bring up this menu of items that I can choose to be alerted on. I'm always going to be alerted if a new bill is added to my search results. But other than that, I can choose to be alerted if any actions are taken on the bills in my search. I could also say, you know, if a committee, if my bill is, any of these bills in my search results are sent to a committee, I can be alerted on that, or if there's committee action. And then I can click Confirm Alerts. The great thing about setting up save searches and search alerts as well is that once you have done that, you are able to pretty easily and quickly cancel them if you want to. So I'm actually going to come up to alerts and just show you here. Let me get out my annotation tool that you can cancel your alert and edit your alert pretty easily just from the click of a button. But another thing I want to point out here is that we know that your inboxes are just packed full right now, your email inboxes. So we don't want to send you a million emails. If you want to consolidate your saved search alerts, you can do that. All you have to do is click this button here, and it'll consolidate your search alerts so you only get one email when something changes in any of your saved search alerts. Okay, so just keep that in mind. We want to make it as easy as possible for you guys, and you can come back to those searches at a later date. All right. So coming back to my search results, I mentioned that the facets or filters on your left-hand side are going to be really helpful for narrowing down your search results. So in this case, I know that this bill is being considered in the current Congress, the 118th. I know that it started in the House, and I know that it's passed the House. So I can quickly select 118th Congress. Might take a second to process since we've got lots of search results. That takes me even, you can see here, down under 500 search results, 344. Then I can narrow down to Chamber of Origin. I know it started in the House because it's an HR bill. So I can hit House. Takes me down to under 200. And then I can open up Status of Legislation and select Passed at least one chamber. And that takes me down to 7 results. So you can see, even though I had well over 3,000 search results, just a few clicks of buttons on my filters menu, and I'm down to 7. The other thing I want to note is your sort feature, and the sort feature is right here. Now, I've been doing some searches today, so my default search right now is date of introduction, newest to oldest. You guys, if you are starting out your searches on Congress.gov, should have your default already be relevancy. But if it's not, please feel free to change your sort feature to relevancy. And then you're going to have your most relevant items pop to the top of your search results. And number 1 right there is the one we're looking for, HR 2670. One thing I want to point out before I click that link to the bill and show you what a bill summary and status page looks like is I want to note the tracker bar. Tracker bar is going to show up under each bill in your search results, unless you have asked for it not to be shown up here. So if you don't see the tracker, you can ask for it to be shown right there at the top of your limiters. And it shows you how far this bill either has gotten in the current Congress, if you're dealing with a current bill, or if you're dealing with a past bill, how far it got in Congress. So this bill has been introduced, it's passed the House, and it's passed the Senate. It hasn't, I don't believe it's been sent to the president yet because I believe the Senate made some amendments. So it's going to have to then go back to the House to get passed by the House. But at least you know kind of at a glance where it's gotten so far in the process. All right, so let me hit the link for HR 2670. And then from here, each bill summary and status page is going to look pretty similar, going to have the same setup. You're going to have the bill number, the bill title, the Congress in which the bill was introduced. And then if you're dealing with a bill from the current Congress, you can set up an alert on that bill. So you're alerted anytime anything happens to this bill as it moves through Congress. That's not going to be true for prior bills again, because bills die at the end of a Congress if they haven't gotten passed. So no more actions are going to take place on those past bills. So that Get Alerts link is only going to show up for bills currently being considered. All right, next under that, you're going to see a overview box. The overview box kind of has at a glance information that we're asked about a lot at the reference desk. So who sponsored the bill? What committees has it been sent to? Have there been any committee meetings, or will there be any committee meetings in the near future? Have those committees created any reports or prints? And what has been the latest action? So you see all that there. Another thing we get asked about a lot is whether there are cost estimates, so how much a bill might cost the taxpayer. If the Congressional Budget Office has put together any cost estimates, we link you to those cost estimates here on the side. And we also link you to information about how to contact your members. If you are particularly interested in this bill, you want to contact your members of Congress, we give you that link right there to do so. All right. Coming on down the page, each page is going to default to the summary tab. And for those of you who might have used Thomas in the past, I know we're getting a little farther from Thomas every day, but you might remember that Thomas had a whole list of links, and you would have to click a link, get taken to a new page, hit the back button, get back to your bill summary and status page, and repeat. Here we've tried to make it easy for you and make all of those different features of the page into tabs so that you can easily navigate on the same bill summary and status page. The summary tab is made up of summaries that are written by analysts in the Congressional Research Service. And they do a new summary every time major changes are made to a bill. So you can use the drop-down menu to select different versions of the bill if you'd like to see different summaries as that bill moves through Congress. If you're more of an auditory learner and you'd like the page to be read to you, we do have this new read speaker option, and you can click the play button here and have the page be read to you. That's also true for the next page, the text tab. Text tab is set up pretty similarly in the way that you can use the read speaker option at the top, and it has a drop-down menu that you can use to look at the different versions of a bill as it moves through sorry, I clicked on something by accident there, as it moves through Congress. So if I wanted to see, you know, the version that was first introduced in the House, I could click that and be taken to that version. You're largely going to see either text or HTML, XML. Let me go back a step to the introduced in House version, just to show you. This is the XML HTML version, which will, you know, show up as the bill is kind of ingested into Congress.gov. If you're dealing with a bill that is, you know, pretty long and you want to send someone to a particular title or section or subsection, you'll note as you kind of hover over the different titles and sections that there will be this link option. We call this deep linking. It's something that you can use to send someone directly to a title or a section of interest within a bill, and that can really save you some time. So this just copies to your clipboard, and then you can paste it into an email and send it to someone. And that saves both you and that person time, so they're taken directly to the item that you're interested in, that you're talking about. And that can really help when you're dealing, let me choose a different version of this bill. When you're dealing with a bill that might have, you know, hundreds or thousands of pages. Next over, oh, and you can also, sorry, I meant to note this, you can also download the text of the bill in PDF form. Anything that you download in PDF form from Congress.gov has been OCR'd, which means you can search by keyword within the PDF. All right, let me come over to the Actions tab. Actions tab gives you information about everything that's happened to a bill since its introduction up to the current day. And to find all of that information, all you would have to do is click the All Actions radio button here. You'll see once I do that, it shows me all 226 results for this bill, and it provides me with filters menus. So if I were only interested, let's say, in committee actions, I could narrow down to committees. If I were only interested in actions taken by the House or the Senate, I can narrow down to those chambers. As you can see by one of the options here being voting information, roll call votes, we do have voting information for bills and floor amendments going back to 1989, and they are linked within your Actions tab. So let me get my annotation tool out again. Here is a link to the House page where you can find information about how different members of the House voted on this bill. All right. We also link you to pages of the congressional record. For those of you who aren't familiar with the congressional record, it's the substantially verbatim account of the debates of Congress. So what is said on the floor, any speeches that are given, also any voting information that occurs in the congressional record, and we link you to the congressional record whenever any action is taken. And you can see that there. We're going to talk about the congressional record a little bit more in just a moment, so put a pin in that, and I will talk about it in just a second. As you scroll down, I'm going to narrow down to just committee information, and you can see if there is a report or hearing that's mentioned that we have the text for, we link you to that as well. All right. And we're going to look at reports again also in just a moment, so put a pin in that as well. All right, coming over here to titles. So when you're dealing with a large bill like an authorization act or an appropriations bill, sometimes those very large, hundreds or even thousands of page bills kind of gobble up smaller bills and make them a part or a section or a title of that larger bill. If that happens, on the titles tab, you're going to be able to see the short titles of those smaller bills that have become titles of the larger bill. So here, let me get out again. And you can see here, these are bills that were being considered as separate bills, but now they have kind of been gobbled up into this bill and are considered titles of this bill. All right. And so when you do a keyword search for these smaller bills, this larger bill will also come up in your search results because it's on this titles page. All right. And oh, sorry. Also, these smaller bills are going to show up. I'm going to skip to the end to show you the related bills tab. They'll also show up in this related bills tab. And these are bills that have been identified as being related to the current bill that are also being considered or were considered in this Congress. So this bill is being considered in the current Congress, the 118th Congress. So on the related bills tab, you're also going to get other, let me delete that. You're going to get other bills from the 118th Congress that are considered related to your bill. And those relationships, as you can see here, are identified by the House, Senate, and the Congressional Research Service. You'll see here also some of these related bills are going to be considered or related bills. They're also resolutions. So sometimes if there's like a procedural resolution regarding how this bill is going to be considered and voted on, you'll find them listed here as well. And you can get linked to those resolutions and those related bills. All right, Amendments tab. On the Amendments tab, you're going to find links to the text and the actions taken on floor amendments. And a cool thing here is that you can see on the filters on the left-hand side, you can narrow down by sponsor, by party of the sponsor, the chamber in which it was considered, and also the status of amendment. So if I only wanted to see, let's see, House amendment agreed to. So these are amendments that were agreed to in the House. I could click that and it takes me down to 27 amendments. If I wanted to see that amendment, I'd just click on the link. It takes me to the amendment summary page. Lets me know which bill it's related to, the sponsor, the latest action, and then it links me to the congressional record where I can find the text of the amendment. All right, let me go back. Co-sponsors, we don't have as many co-sponsors for this one, but just for future reference, if you see a bill with lots of co-sponsors attached to it, I want to note that something that's new as of Congress.gov is that you can limit your co-sponsors by party and by US state or territory. So if you've got a lot of co-sponsors and you just want to see the co-sponsors maybe from your state, you could do that using the links on the left-hand side of your page. All right. And then finally, committees. On the committees tab, you're going to get to see every committee and subcommittee that has looked at the bill. And also you're going to get to see information about when markup sessions were held, when hearings were held, if any hearings were held, and also if the committee reported the bill out and they created a published report, we'll also link you to that report here. All right, so that is a basic overview of the bill summary and status page. But I know oftentimes that you're not particularly maybe looking for a bill. You might be looking for, let's say, statements made by a member of interest on the floor or of Congress, or perhaps one of those committee reports or committee hearings. There's easy ways to do that as well using Congress.gov. I'm going to go back to the home page, and I'm going to actually collapse the legislation quick search. And I want to do a sample search for statements made or statements printed in the congressional record. So if you wanted to go just directly to the congressional record, let me show you. At the top of the Congress.gov page, you're going to have these links to different landing pages for members, committees, the congressional record, and legislation generally. I'm going to click the congressional record link. You're going to get to see the latest issue of the daily edition of the congressional record. That's going to be on the homepage, where you can see what happened in the Senate, what happened in the House, and if there were any extensions of remarks. So things entered into the record or tributes that were entered into the record that might not have actually been read out on the floor, but are in the congressional record. Going back to that homepage, you can, if you know which day you're looking for, limit by date here. But I want to show you how to do kind of just a general keyword search within the congressional record to find statements made by a particular member. So the example I like to use, we got asked once about this at the desk, and I just think it's such a good example that I like to use it in this webinar. They were asking us for all statements made by the ranking member on the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technologies Subcommittee on Space regarding the funding of NASA. So that would be a person that would probably have a lot to say about NASA and its funding. And that person is Representative Eddie Bernice Johnson. But to really do kind of a wide, cast my net widely again, which I love to do, what I might do is just search for NASA. So I've chosen congressional record from my drop-down menu. I'm going to type in, NASA, and then hit search. And it's going to give me a lot of results. Okay, almost 13,000. That's fine. Again, I'm going to use my facets, my filters over here on the left-hand side. I'm particularly interested in what Representative Johnson had to say about NASA. So I'm going to narrow down to member remarks in the congressional record. She is in the House. I'm going to click see more. I'm going to click J for Johnson, her last name. And then here she is, Representative Eddie Bernice Johnson from Texas. And you'll see that gets us from almost 13,000 down to just 177 search results. Now, if I wanted to narrow within these search results, I can do that easily from this global search box. I'm going to delete NASA, and I'm going to type in fund. And I'm going to use one of those wildcards that Robert was talking about earlier. I'm going to use the asterisk, and that's going to give me anything that starts with the letters FUND, and it could end completely differently. So funds, funded, funding, etc. I'm going to click search within. And so it's searching within my 177 search results. So it doesn't take me down too far, but it does get rid of almost 30 of them. And then you can see here, I could filter down even more if I only wanted things from the prior Congress, etc. And then if I wanted to look at this congressional record page, I could click it here, the title. It's going to take me to that page in the congressional record. If I wanted to see a PDF copy, I could do that as well. I'm going to click PDF here. Might take a second to download. This is what it would look like if you had the print copy of the congressional record in front of you. And just to show you, I'm going to do a Control F find search for Johnson. And it's going to show me, well, every time that Johnson is mentioned, there's a Mr. Johnson as well, and a President Johnson. But eventually, there we go. It'll get us to Ms. Johnson of Texas speaking about this bill. Okay, so something to consider when you're doing your research regarding the congressional records, the debates of Congress. But before we open it up for questions, I also want to show you how to do a search regarding those congressional committee documents. So another interesting question we got asked at the desk that I like to use as an example is someone was looking for reports regarding a bill regarding the redevelopment of old post office buildings. And they thought it happened around the 110th Congress, but they weren't entirely sure. So what we would do in that case is you can choose committee materials from your drop-down list. I'm going to type in redevelopment, old post office buildings. Hit enter. I've got over a thousand search results. Here, this might be a good place to narrow down to Congress. He wasn't sure whether or not it was like 2007, 2008. So I could choose multiple Congresses here if I wanted to. So I could choose 109, 110, etc. But he actually turned out to be right. So there was a bill, HR, well, let me get my tool out, HR 5001 from the 110th Congress that dealt with old post office building redevelopment. If I wanted to see either of those reports, I'd just click on the report number. It's going to tell me what bill that report accompanies, what committee created the report, and then it's going to give me the text of the report below. You could have Read Speaker read you the page. You can also download a pretty PDF copy of that report. And again, I could search within there. I could say post office. And it's going to show me every time post office shows up. Another cool thing is if you're dealing with a bill that had multiple reports attached to it, we will link you to those other reports here in the margin as well. All right. Oh, sorry, there is one other thing I want to note. If you are on a bill page or a report page like this, you'll notice we've added the citation feature up here. So if you click on that, you'll see that you will be able to copy a citation either in Blue Book, APA, MLA, or Chicago Manual of Style format to your clipboard, and then for this page, and then you'll be able to have that if you want to keep that in like a source list. Before I open it up for questions, I want to note if we don't get to your questions today, or you have a question later on, you're doing some searching and you're running into some issues, I want to note two places where you can get help, depending on what your question is. If you scroll down to the bottom of any Congress.gov page, you're going to see a couple links under help that are going to be helpful for you. The one I really want to note here is Ask a Law Librarian. So if you have any questions about, you've set up a search, you thought you were using the right keywords, you thought you were, in the right resource, but you're not getting the results you need, or, that there's been a bill considered in the current Congress, but it's not showing up. This is a great place to ask questions. You can either send us a question via this form here, or you'll see we've also linked you to our public telephone line as well on the side. If your question is more about kind of the website itself, you can provide, sorry, I might have done that fast. You can provide feedback and kind of technical feedback. So like, let's say you clicked a link and it didn't take you to the right thing, or you think that there should be something added to Congress.gov, a feature added. If you click feedback, there is a link to a short survey where you can use the text box in that survey to let us know both what you think and also if you have any suggestions for improvements. So technical side, survey is a great one. Any kind of reference question like, how do I set up this search? Do you have any suggestions on how to search? Ask a law librarian is a great place to be. All right, so that is the end of our demonstration period, but let's look and see if we have any questions. If you have any questions right now, all we ask is that you submit it via the Q&A feature. In your Zoom window, there should be a little button that kind of looks like two cartoon talk bubbles lap over each other. Just put your question into that Q&A feature and send it in. And again, if we don't get to your question today, that Ask a Law Librarian is available at the bottom of every Congress.gov screen.
Thanks. And while Barbara's looking at the questions, I want to mention that on September 13th at 1 p.m., both online and in person, we're holding the Congress.gov public forum. We'll discuss the latest enhancements that have been made to Congress.gov. And it's also an opportunity for users to tell us how we can better serve your legislative information needs. So it's also a listening session. And I'll put the link to register for that in the chat if you're interested.
Thanks, Robert. I see, so let me see, I have a question about alerts and whether there are any kind of nuances and quirks. Good question. For alerts, I think kind of the main things I'd like to point out is if you want to consolidate your search results, I suggest doing that. You can see I've already done that in my account. If you are searching a lot on similar topics, you might have seen when I saved this this search. Actually, let me see if I can show you. Oh no, it's too late. When I set up this search for the NDAA, you do have an option to set up kind of a summary about that search. And so if you want to kind of set your different searches apart, even though it might be on similar topics, that would be a good place to do that. All right. I see a question about current or open committee meetings. So, okay, let me show you. Let me collapse my legislative quick search. So Robert talked a little bit about kind of what's here on the homepage before. Let me show also. Here you're going to see right under the current legislative activities, you're going to see upcoming House and Senate meetings. There is also under recent to the side of current legislative activities, committee schedule. All right. So let me click that. Now they're in recess, so there's not a lot, but let me do, let me go back a couple weeks. And you'll be able to see the committee schedule. It's going to give you the information about when the committee meeting is being held. And then you can click meeting details. And again, you get to that kind of landing page that Robert talked about earlier in the presentation, where it gives you the committee that's holding the meeting, where it's being held. So this is another one that's out in the field. And then eventually it'll give you witness and video information as well. So if you do want to contact the committee that's holding that meeting, you can go to their website. And that website is going to have a lot of great information about how to contact them and how to find maybe some of that hearing information on via their website. So this is the Committee on Oversight. And you can see some of these. I'm just choosing one of them. If you click on it, it'll give you the video as well as the witness information. You can also get to committee information via the committee's link that's at the top of the page. And you can click on any of these links to get to those committees. And also, we get asked a lot about where to find the videos of committee hearings. That's located here on the side of the page. All right. Okay, another question is, are there any links, tabs, pages the general public doesn't normally know about, obscure history pages, or things like that? Well, Robert talked a little about, it's not obscure, but Robert talked a little about the Constitution Annotated. I think a lot of people don't know that that's there, and that the Constitution Annotated also has kind of that featured issues part that Robert talked about. That links you to Congressional Research Service reports that talks about the issues that the Supreme Court is interested in. Another thing that I think is really helpful, and jump in, Robert, if I'm missing something, under the support and the help center, you're going to see some information under getting started. The thing that I like to point people to the most is the learn about the legislative process page, because this gives you, if you're kind of getting stuck about why the bill is taking the direction that it's taking, why is it getting sent back to the House when it already passed the House or something like that, these booklets and videos can really help you at all different levels of knowledge learn more about the legislative process. So anything from this 67-page How Our Laws Are Made report down to Kids in the House, which has it at different both elementary and secondary school levels. So that's what I would suggest. Okay, it looks like we are at we're at 3:01 now. So thank you all for coming. We're going to end the webinar now. You're going to see when we end the webinar that you're going to get served a survey. If you wouldn't mind filling that out for us, that would be great. And thank you so much for coming today. Have a good one.